I watched the president of our HOA peel a bright orange sticker that said, "Court order, do not remove, right off my fence," like she was ripping a grocery coupon. She did it smiling in front of her 2 grown sons while my phone camera caught every second. And a few weeks later, that same smile died in a courtroom when her own kid stood up and basically ended her reign in one sentence. So yeah, let me back up. My name's Jake Miller, and I live in a place called Maplewood Estates, one of those picture-perfect neighborhoods where every lawn looks like it's been vacuumed. I moved in with my girlfriend Emily because we wanted quiet and we wanted normal. What we got was the Homeowners Association, and the kind of person who treats it like a personal throne. Her name was Linda Parker. If you've ever met a Linda Parker, you already know tight smile, clipboard energy, and that tone where every sentence sounds like a warning. She'd stroll the block like she was inspecting a battleship, pointing out violations like she was doing the Lord's work. At first I stayed out of her orbit. Then I noticed something weird, little stakes near my side yard shifting by inches over a couple weeks. And the more they shifted, the more it felt like my property line was drifting toward Linda's. There's this huge old oak near the line, the kind of tree that makes a yard feel like a yard. Linda wanted it. She'd mentioned it casually more than once, like she was planting the idea in the air. One morning I caught her son Tyler hammering in a new marker while Linda stood there with her arms crossed watching like a foreman. I walked over and said, "Hey, what's that?" Linda didn't even blink. "We're correcting the boundary. The HOA has records." I said, "Cool, I have a deed." Her smile tightened. "Then you won't mind if we verify." So I verified. I hired a surveyor, got the official markers, and sure enough, my property line was exactly where I thought it was. Linda's correction was a land grab, plain and simple. I sent her the survey. She replied with one line, "Those measurements are disputed." Disputed. By who? Her imagination. That's when I called a lawyer, Mark Davis, the kind of guy who sounds calm, even when he's telling you someone's about to regret breathing near your mailbox. I didn't want a war, I just wanted my yard back. It still turned into a war. Linda kept pushing. More letters, more violations. And then when I finally put up a fence right on the surveyed line, she claimed it was non-compliant, even though it matched the exact specs. Mark took it to court. The judge ruled in my favor, clear as day. I was allowed to build the fence on my property, and Linda was ordered to stop interfering. And because she'd already messed with the boundary markers, the court required a warning notice on the fence posts, bright orange stickers that basically screamed, "Do not touch this." I stuck them on the posts myself. It felt petty, but it also felt like protection. For about 3 days. It was a Saturday morning when it happened. Emily was still asleep. I was on the porch with coffee, and I saw Linda walking up like she owned the sidewalk. She wasn't alone. Tyler and her other son, Brandon, were with her, both mid-20s, both built like they still thought high school football was a personality trait. Tyler had that restless, cocky bounce, and Brandon looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Linda stopped at my fence and pointed at the stickers like they were graffiti. "Oh, absolutely not," she said loud enough for the neighbor's curtains to twitch. "This violates Section 12, unauthorized signage." I stood up, slow coffee still in my hand. "Linda, those are court-ordered." She tilted her head. "The HOA doesn't recognize court stickers as approved signage." I actually laughed because it was so stupid it didn't fit in my brain. That's not how reality works. Linda stepped closer, pinched the edge of the sticker and peeled. Just peeled it right off. Then she peeled the second. Then the third. Tyler chuckled like it was a prank. I didn't yell. I didn't run over. I just pulled out my phone, hit record, and let the red dot do its job. Linda noticed the camera and smiled wider like she was daring me. "You're being hostile, Jake." I said, "No, I'm being documented." She tossed the torn stickers into my yard like trash turned on her heel and walked off with her sons like they'd just finished a charity project. Emily came out a minute later, saw my face, saw the ripped pieces on the grass, and said, "Please tell me you filmed that." I held up my phone. Every second. I thought that would be the end of it, right? Court order video proof easy. Nope. Monday afternoon I got a letter from the HOA. Not an apology. A bill. $1,500 in fines stacked like they were playing Jenga with my patience. Unauthorized signage. Fence non-compliance. Creating a hostile community environment. Hostile. Because I didn't let them steal my yard. Emily read the letter twice, then set it down like it burned her fingers. Jake, this is insane. And that's the thing about HOA nonsense. It's never one big punch. It's 100 little paper cuts until you start asking yourself if bleeding is just your new hobby. That week was brutal. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected another notice. Every time I saw Linda's SUV crawl past my house, I felt my jaw lock up. Emily stopped parking in the driveway because she didn't want her car photographed and turned into evidence of some imaginary violation. And I hit this quiet moment late at night, sitting at the kitchen table staring at those fines, where I actually wondered if I should just pay it and move on. Not because I thought Linda was right, but because I was tired. Tired of the stress, tired of dragging Emily through it, tired of feeling like my own home had an audience. Mark called the next day and said, "If you want peace, we can try a settlement." And I almost said yes. Almost. Then I remembered Linda's face while she peeled that sticker, the part where she wasn't confused or misinformed. She was confident, like she'd done this before and gotten away with it. So I told Mark, no, we're not settling. The next HOA board meeting was on a Thursday night in the community clubhouse. I showed up with a folder so thick it looked like a college textbook. Emily squeezed my hand before I went in and said, "Don't let them twist this." The room was set up like a cheap courtroom, folding tables up front, a little microphone, and Linda seated dead center like a judge. 2 board members flanked her, nodding at everything she said like dashboard bobbleheads. She started the meeting by recognizing concerns about a certain resident. Then she looked straight at me and said, "Jake, you've been escalating conflict." I walked up, set my folder on the table, and said I'd like to respond. Linda leaned back. "Make it brief." I slid my phone forward and hit play. The video filled the room. Linda's voice. Linda's hands, the sound of the sticker tearing. Tyler's laugh in the background. My calm voice saying, "Those are court-ordered." The room went dead quiet. Linda's smile vanished so fast it was almost funny. She tried to recover with this sharp little laugh. "That video is out of context." I said, "Here's the context." And I laid down a printed copy of the court order highlighted with the exact line about the required warnings. Linda stared at it like it was written in a language she hated. "The HOA bylaws," I cut in. "Don't override a judge." Somebody in the back. Ray Collins, an older neighbor I'd waved at 100 times but never really talked to, muttered, "About time someone said that." Linda ended the meeting early, like literally shut it down, packed her bag, and walked out. 2 days later, she sued me. Not just the HOA issued a fine, sued me. Linda Parker, acting through the HOA, filed a whole lawsuit claiming I was defaming her, harassing her family, damaging property values, creating emotional distress. It read like she'd Googled how to sound like a victim and checked every box. Mark called me and said, "This is a pressure play. She wants to bury you in legal costs." And for the first time, I felt something colder than anger. I felt targeted. That's when Ray showed up at my door with a 6-pack and a look like he'd been waiting years for this. He said, "She's been using the HOA like a weapon. You're just the first guy who brought receipts." Then he told me something that didn't sit right. HOA money always seemed to vanish into maintenance projects. Yet the sidewalks were cracked, the pool lights were broken, and the landscaping looked like it was being watered with regret. Ray mentioned a vendor name he'd seen on trucks at Linda's house years ago. Prestige something. He couldn't remember the full name, but he remembered it because it showed up a lot. Like a ghost contractor. That was my pivot. If Linda was comfortable suing people, she was comfortable spending HOA money to do it. And if she was comfortable spending HOA money, she was comfortable moving it. Mark filed for discovery. And when the financial records finally landed, it was like someone dumped a filing cabinet onto my life. Invoices, payments, vendor lists, pages and pages of community services that didn't match anything I'd ever seen improved. I started highlighting like a maniac. Same vendor name over and over. Prestige Property Solutions. Checks cut monthly, sometimes weekly, for consulting administration special projects. The numbers weren't huge individually, but together it was a river. Mark did a corporate lookup, and there it was. Prestige Property Solutions registered under a name that matched Linda's maiden name. My stomach dropped. We dug deeper, bank transfers, reimbursements, charges that looked a lot like personal spending dressed up in business clothes. It wasn't just shady, it was obvious. And then Brandon Parker. Linda's quieter son, the one who always looked uncomfortable, became the crack in the wall. Because buried in the emails was a thread where Brandon questioned a payment. Not aggressively, just, "Hey, why is the HOA paying this vendor again?" Linda's reply was ice, "Stay out of board matters." I ran into Brandon at the neighborhood basketball court a few nights later. Tyler wasn't there. Linda wasn't there. Just Brandon alone, shooting like he was trying to erase thoughts. I walked up and said, "I'm not here to fight you." He didn't answer, just kept bouncing the ball. I said, "Your mom's lawsuit is going to drag you into this anyway. And if what I found is real, it's not just my problem anymore." He finally looked at me, eyes tired, like he'd been carrying something heavy for a long time. "You don't understand her." I said, "I understand money." Brandon swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" I didn't threaten him. I didn't preach. I just said, "Tell the truth when someone asks." That's it. He stared at the ground for a long moment, then nodded once, small and shaky. Court day came fast. Linda walked in, dressed like she was attending a gala. Perfect hair, perfect blazer, perfect smug confidence. Tyler sat behind her, bouncing his knee like he was ready to start something. Brandon sat 2 seats away, pale and still. The judge started with the basics, motions, claims, the usual. Then Mark stood up and said, "Your Honor, we have newly obtained financial evidence relevant to motive and misuse of association funds, and we have a witness prepared to testify." Linda's head snapped toward him. "What witness?" Mark turned slightly and said, "Brandon Parker." The room shifted. Brandon stood up slowly like his body was arguing with itself, then walked to the front. Linda's face went tight, then red, then tight again like she was trying to clamp reality shut. Brandon raised his hand, got sworn in, and his voice came out quiet but clear. "My mom used the HOA to pay her company. Prestige. She told me not to ask questions." Linda exploded. "That's a lie." The judge shut her down instantly. "Ms. Parker, you will not interrupt testimony." Tyler half rose out of his seat, angry, but a bailiff stepped in front of him and suddenly he remembered where he was. Mark handed over the documents, incorporation records, payment trails, email threads. He also informed the judge that copies had been forwarded to the appropriate authorities for investigation. Linda looked around like she couldn't believe the room had stopped worshiping her. But that's the thing about power when it's built on bullying. It only holds up as long as everyone stays scared. The judge dismissed her claims, noted the retaliatory nature of the lawsuit, and ordered the HOA to cease enforcement actions against me related to the fence and the stickers. And when Linda tried one last time to argue bylaws, the judge said flat and final, bylaws don't supersede the law. Linda's mouth opened, and nothing came out. That afternoon she was removed from the board pending investigation, and the HOA was forced to call an emergency election. I drove home, pulled into my driveway, and looked at my fence still standing, still mine, like it was a line I'd finally made real. Some people mistake silence for permission, and that's exactly why you don't give it to them.